everybody, Kathi Hanson here. So excited to be able to get this time with you all today and share with you a lot of my special effect techniques that I personally think are really cool and hope you do too. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. First thing I want to talk about is General's charcoal because they have two different formulas and each one of them is going to get a total different look with these special effect techniques. Their traditional charcoal is dry and dusting. You lay it down. It's a charcoal that you slowly build up to get some medium values and then dark values. The Primo charcoal is a creamy formula, and I really feel like the particles are ground a lot finer, and that's why they so effortlessly just impregnate the paper. If you're looking for bold charcoal effects, look at just one application. Bold, dark pigment. You can use these separate or you can combine them. Look at how this even makes it look so much darker. And it's the same formula with the sticks. Traditional charcoal is going to lay out like that. Primo is going to give you that bold pigment. So, now the next thing I want to do is actually individually talk about your pencil or your stick. I would have the kids pick up the pencil and say, how many different marks can you make with it? They'd usually do the handwriting position. They would make a thin mark. They would make a wider mark with the blunt part of the tip, or they would do hatch, cross hatch, circles, squiggles, and say, that's what I can do with the pencil. And I'd say, well, what else can you do with the pencil? And they would look at me dumbfoundedly and say, I don't know. And I'm like, look where your fingers are. When you use the handwriting position, you're going to get a very precise line. Now walk that pencil up about to where it says Made in the USA. Same amount of pressure. And that line look different? Go halfway up to the pencil where it says General. Isn't that going to look a little different? The value changes and the lines get looser and looser. Back up on this. Even less controlled. Way back on the end of it. Even less controlled. Then we go one step further. If you want to softly block in an area, what position would you have your fingers on that? Well, I'd say way back here if you want it nice and light. If you want it tight, or maybe midway. If you want it real precise, you would do that handwriting position. So make sure your students are utilizing the entire length of the pencil as well as sticks. Most people will take sticks and just work off the corner, or they'll use them to do rubbings or something. But let's take it one step further. How about sharpening the tip? Well, it's almost going to be like a pencil, but because you hold a little different and it's blockier, look at even in a real tight, it's going to give a different distinction in the line, a little looser, but also look at the value changes when you move it around. This is a real easy way to get more than one value just working with one single pencil or stick. Let's go one step further. If we were going to do random marks, say scruffy grass in a desert or something, we would try to make them different widths, lengths, working up some maybe tighter. And we could actually create more than one value, different width lines and different loose and tight lines. But how about taking the other end of it and utilizing the four corners of the stick? Here's a fresh stick. Tell the kids to try to make all four corners hit the paper. Get a little more pressure if you want it a little darker. Go back further if you want it a little looser. Isn't that totally different than that? I think this adds a lot of excitement. Now, this one, I broke the tip off. So, because I wanted even more design patterns. And this one's going to look a little different because the corners have a different shape to them. So this is just a fun, quick example to warm the kids up to expand their mind. Think outside the box. Don't just look at the tip to see what you can do with the pencil. Now I'm going to go one step further. How about we grate some of the pigment off the tip and see what kind of designs we can create.
I like to use a lot of objects from the house or inexpensive things from a craft store because, as you all know, we don't have big art budgets now, do we? So this is a number 4B pencil. So I'm going to get soft effects here. If I were going to use an HB pencil to grate with either a sanding paddle, like I have here, or an emery board, the particles would be a little firmer and you would have a little more texture and light and dark values within the design. I'm going to pick up a cotton ball and pretend I'm twisting off a bottle cap. Let's see what mark this is going to make. Isn't that cool? Now I'm going to take an ES20 extra soft white vinyl eraser and do the exact same motion, and because this is denser than the cotton ball, the same design is going to be much bolder. Isn't that cool? All right, what else can we take? How about we take a tortillon and lay it on its side and utilize all those little ends of the round paper. Can you just, is your mind starting to go? I see that texture in trees or wood or something. Now, a room key is going to be even denser than the tortillon. Look at what mark it's going to make. And these by themselves are great secondary mark making things to add additional interest. It doesn't stop there. Imagine coming back and then with that pencil tip and further developing this. Let's say this, couldn't you maybe see this part of a tree that has lots of texture in the trunk? How about I take a metal soup spoon, or teaspoon or tablespoon. I like these particles just like this because some are fat, some are skinny. But if I leave it like this, the minute air comes into contact with it, it's just going to blow right off the paper. So let's lay the spoon down and rock it back and forth. Not like this, stationary back and forth. This is going to embed those particles into the paper and even give a slightly different look. Another thing I could do is not use not as much pressure, and just embed some of them, not all of them, and pick up a soft brush, mop brush possibly, and then continue to move those particles even more to get additional soft values within all those marks. Now, you'll love these marks, but they might smear. So what I always do, once I have it exactly the way I want it, is I take a piece of tissue paper. You're going to notice a lot of the tissue paper from the dollar stores have a slick side and a dull absorbent side. You're going to take the dull absorbent side, lay it over your work, and then rub and rub and rub and rub and rub. You're going to push all those particles into the paper, and what the paper can absorb, the tissue paper will, and then it won't smear on you. The more I played around with grading pigment particles and manipulating them, the more I fell in love with the look. So I started looking for additional things that I could incorporate with them, and the first thing I thought of was templates. I found, though, the more I experimented with it, that I got a different look if I graded the particles over it and then pounced with the brush, or if I graded them and either put them in a cup on foil or in a cup with a lid and then pounced and brushed it over it. So, for instance, things like this. This is a great, you could do an entire design with this, or you could just do a partial design and then incorporate a hand-drawn element in front of it. So it made a really, really great background effect. Now that was it just brushed on. Now I'll grate the pencil tip and then manipulate it, and you're going to see that it has a slightly different look. Oop, I moved it. Gosh darn. Well, hopefully we'll get what we're looking for. This time I kind of pounce it. And you might see a little more texture within it. See how you see those little bit of more texture particles in it that way. And it is actually a little bit darker. So again, I love the fact that students have options. Well, what is the intended look? Do you want it very, very soft, or do you want a little more texture and bold effect? There are so many cool stencils out here. Here's just a few more. I'm going to be brushing it on just because I can work faster and I don't have a lot of time. Notice I did one really dark. This one is going to have more than one value in it. This one I'll just kind of just scrape it through, and hopefully the camera will pick it up. Because this brush is very stiff, it almost has a little bit of a striated effect to it. Now before I blow them off, I'm going to actually move this powder out of the way. Isn't that cool? And notice they all have a little bit of a different value to them. Then I started thinking, ooh, what are other things I can do? And I like to dumpster dive, drives my kids nuts. I'm nosy. I like to see what the neighbors put in the garbage I can reuse. This is drywall tape. Now for this one, because I actually wanted a little bit textured, well, I'll texture one side and not the other. That half I'll grate. The other half I'll load my brush. Now even with my loaded brush, I like to change up the angle of the brush and the amount of pressure I use on the brush, because I think it's super cool to have more than one value in something. Same on this side, but you're going to notice when I pounce, you might see a little bit of texture in there. What's great about this is it's stationary because it's sticky. If you want to reuse it, I just put it on some wax paper. See, a little more textured, a little softer. I could leave that alone, or I could pick up this ES20 Extra Soft White Vinyl Eraser and partially lay down with it. What's really great about this is it will effortlessly, totally, let me get this darker, erase right to the white of the paper. That's how you know you have a really good eraser. But it will also partially lift like a kneaded, depending on how hard you press. It will partially lift out. So sometimes it's fun to do that over here and create a pattern within a pattern, depending on the intended look. What's another cool thing? I used to hand draw my lace all the time. Found this cool little lace template in the baking area at the local craft store. Load my brush. Now this I want real soft, so I'm doing a soft circular motion, bringing it slightly out over the edge with the brush. But I also could have loaded my cotton ball and also brought it out that way on the outside if I wanted to extend it further. Come back with my brush, make sure I got all these holes filled in, lift it off, voila. Now, depending on the age and ability of your students, you want to take it a little bit further, they could come back with a pencil tip and say, let's get 2 more additional values in here in small areas, and that will even pop it and make it much, much more dimensional. Oh, how about some of these specialty papers you can find in the store? You see how all of them are going to give you a slightly different pattern. I go to the stores and I ask them if they have any damaged papers. And lots of times they have them in the back and can't sell them, so they will give them to me for a song. Lift these up. Are your mind starting to spin? Here are some additional ones. Not going to do them, but just to give you a nice idea. This is a cool one too. Let's pop this one down. I always like showing this one. Loading up my brush again. Almost looks like leopard spots or something like that. And then last but not least, I found this fiber paper I fell in love with. And I was like, wouldn't it be great if these lines I could transfer over to my paper? So you can either grate the pigment, or you can just brush it on, have them have a different piece of paper, wax paper, tin foil, anything. load it up. You can even go one step further if you want it textured. After you've loaded it up, let's put a few particles on there too. See if they'll transfer over. Then you're going to pick it up, flip it over onto your paper, take that metal spoon again, and we're going to burnish. We're just rub, rub, rub. Hopefully we will transfer those fibers onto the surface and you get that kind of a look. How cool is this? Okay, everybody, I thought the perfect way to end this was to actually show you some finished pieces of art that I did incorporate some of those special effect techniques in. In this covered bridge right here, the majority was done with pencil, but if you look closely, all the soft trees way in the distance with hit and miss branches was done with that piece of fiber paper that I loaded with the pigment and then burnished with the spoon. And you'll notice the real tight grass was done with pencil tip and the real loose stuff was done with the four corners of a graphite stick. This one's much more obvious. There is that lace template with the powder that I incorporated into this design. And I like to show the chickadee because I not only used a cotton ball to rouge the real soft background in, but I also loaded some of the pigment on a soft camel hair flat brush and just brushed in all the branches that I wanted to look like they were way in the background, and the foreground ones were done with the pencil tip. Last but not least, this is an example of all these scruffy little bushes and small trees were done with sticks with different techniques, so they all looked a little different, as well as there's a little different pattern in every one of those trees, utilizing several of those techniques that I shared with you where I graded the powder. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. My goal was to get you to think outside the box a little bit and hopefully inspire you. I wish you all a very healthy, happy, and successful classroom experience this year. If you like what you saw, we hope you visit General Pencil's website as well as mine, KathyHanson.com, to view a lot of additional videos that we have on the site, and we are planning to put on a lot more in the future. So thanks again for spending part of your afternoon with me. Take care. Bye now.